On the show today, I have Jennifer Jolly. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you for joining me today. I want to ask you lots and lots of questions, but before we do that, what do you do exactly?
I am a consumer technology journalist at my core, and I use those skills in a variety of different ways. I contribute to USA Today, to the New York Times, to a lot of different TV shows, the Today Show, CNN, HLN. I also do some speaking, public speaking, and host events in and around the technology industry.
What events have you spoken at?
It feels like everything, but let me think. I did a big talk at the New York Times travel show. I've been on a lot of panels. I've hosted a lot of panels about women in technology, in and around women in technology. I've done a lot of speaking at CES, the giant consumer electronics show, and a lot about health gadgets and sort of health technology, where it's been, where it's going, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did you grow up exactly?
I grew up in a tiny little town called Kenai, 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 Alaska.
Sounds like it's far away.
It's very far away. It's middle of the bottom of the state of Alaska. So if you think about the mainland of Alaska, there's the one part that goes out toward Canada and the part that goes out toward Russia. But in terms of the mainland, and for people just listening to this, I'm putting my fingers in a circle, and where my thumbs are touching, that's the bottom of the state of Alaska, and that's right about where the Kenai Peninsula is. And my grandparents homesteaded up there. My grandfather homesteaded right after World War II. And I actually grew up on that homestead, so I'm third generation Alaskan.
That sounds beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
So lots of salmon, lots of seafood.
Yeah, and the way that sort of pivots into this world of consumer technology is when I was growing up, I could walk places where it felt like, and I'm pretty sure no human foot had ever walked before. It was a very sort of pioneering existence. If we were out on our fishing boats and something broke, we had to fix it. And I started working on the fishing boats at the age of 7. So we had a lot of resilience. We were tough. We figured stuff out. And then also, I come to realize as an adult, I come from this family of engineering geniuses. So really, I feel like my dad was the original MacGyver. Like, could fix anything with anything at hand. And so when I grew up and got a job as a journalist and became a broadcast journalist especially, consumer technology was kind of the only way I felt like I could still be involved in some sort of level of pioneering on a daily basis, doing things people hadn't really done before, and then figuring out how to make that relevant to our lives.
So what inspired you to pursue journalism?
I have always had a freakish amount of natural curiosity. I love talking with people. I love seeing things for myself and trying to figure things out for myself. Really, that's it. I mean, I really love writing. I love communication. And the reason why I chose broadcast journalism over print journalism in the beginning was really that because it was the only medium that forced you to go and see things for yourself, to get out, to see it, to
live it, to breathe it.
Exactly. Yeah. To really get to play witness to history in a way that not many other jobs let you do.
Yeah, because I guess if you worked behind the desk, you're not really tasting the air. You're not really out there.
Well, and that's a big problem with what I do now. So I cover technology, and I work from home, and I could sit behind my laptop and watch YouTube videos and see press releases that companies put out, and I could turn stories about them. But until I actually touch something, experience it for myself, I don't really understand it. And I don't feel like I can write about it or be a good journalist and express what I need to if I haven't had that hands-on experience.
That's a good point. Now, since you've moved from Alaska to the Bay Area, how would you describe Silicon Valley culture?
Well, I went to college. What brought me to the Bay Area was a journalism scholarship to the University of San Francisco in 1990.
Okay.
So I've really been here from the very beginning. I remember the first dot-com boom and bust. I was a reporter at KTVU during that time, 1999,
Right.
2000. Silicon Valley culture is very insular. It's a lot of people creating the Kool-Aid, drinking the Kool-Aid, selling the Kool-Aid.
That's a good way of putting it.
And I think that's maybe the easiest way that I can sum up Silicon Valley culture. I think it's easy to forget who you're making these products for, who you're creating these services for, the people who you're really earning a living off of.
Right.
I think those people get forgotten a lot in the rush to technology, especially with products.
That's a good point. So when you first started doing journalism, you were reporting on news first, right?
Yeah,
and then technology.
General assignment reporter for 15 years. Okay. So I covered everything. And I started, my first job on TV was in Bozeman, Montana.
Oh, Bozeman.
Then Missoula, Montana.
I've been there.
It's beautiful.
I've driven by, actually.
Oh, yeah, it's so gorgeous. And that was when Ted Turner was living out there. And so I went fossil digs on Ted Turner's property. It was an incredible experience.
Right.
And
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is really nice, too.
That was gorgeous.
Right.
And I was the North Idaho bureau chief during the O.J. Simpson trial, and Mark Furman lived in Sandpoint, Idaho. So I was 24 years old and doing live shots from Sandpoint and on all of that. So yeah, I had some incredible experiences. I also went back to Alaska for 2 years and really was able to experience Alaska in a way I couldn't growing up there, because I saw all these villages that I flew to that I didn't have the means to fly to, get to see. Right. I did a documentary on polar bears way back when. That must have been around 1995 or 1996. The very, very beginning of global warming. Huh. And talk of global warming. So it's just, it's been an incredible journey.
An incredible experience.
Yeah. And then when I decided around, 2007, that I really didn't want to do politics or crime or any of that anymore, that I really wanted to do consumer technology, there weren't really any women doing it, especially women, my age, who hadn't grown up with it. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to do it.
So what do you think the technology sector is still a male-dominated place?
I think it really stems from, we're not all that far from, these are men's jobs and these are women's jobs. Right. So we haven't seen an influx of female engineers until recent years. I mean, that's still a really new not phenomenon, but that's still a really new career for a lot of women. So I think that's a lot of it. And it seems hard I have an 18-year-old daughter. It seems hard for her to believe that really when I was growing up, a lot of women became teachers and nurses. Right. And, it's hard to imagine that it wasn't very long ago that there were women's jobs and men's jobs, and the two didn't meet all that often. That's
true. I mean, when I've worked at, coding at a company, I seldomly saw females. And when there was a coder female, she was a superstar because they're so rare.
Yeah.
Even and they encourage a lot of women to work in jobs for coding and stuff, but
now they do. Women in STEM is a big topic of conversation. Right. But even at CES this year, this is one of my favorite images from CES 2020. There was a really long line for the men's bathroom. And there was nobody in line for the women's bathroom. It's 2020. Aren't things equal? But there's still 4 times more. I would say 7 out of every 10 people in a room at CES, maybe even 8 out of 10 are men still. Right. So I just think that we just haven't caught up with any sort of equality in the technology space yet. I think there's a lot of steps in the right direction. Right. But yeah.
Do you think it's a natural proclivity for females to like other things, or do you think there's an inherent, there's people who are not wanting
left
women
brain, right brain, exactly. Math. Exactly. I think women are just as good at math and science as men. Okay. I just think we weren't really guided into those professions up until about 10 years ago. Right. And I think that even for me, I only had one child. I only have one child. But even for me, balancing working full time, I was a single mom for a while. Like, even that was so incredibly difficult that I don't know how anybody does it. Still, to this day, I don't know how women juggle working full time, being a mother and full time. That's a huge job, and I think that that's a part of it too, as we see men and women distributing the household and child raising more equally. Then I think that you'll see women in more traditional men's jobs more as well. And then also the other thing that kind of speaks to me as a mom, tech culture is 24/7. You are never off. And that is still the case.
I could attest to that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so if you cherish, and really so many jobs are, I mean, one of my editors at one of my outlets is so busy as a mom. I every single day I wonder how she does it. And I mean, it's still not equal in those ways yet.
I think women have a special, unique power that men don't have, and that is the creation of life. And I think that's maybe that's why women sometimes have to go down the mother's lane and also do the career thing.
Yeah.
Because, unfortunately, men can't do that. But
I understand what Sheryl Sandberg was talking about with leaning in, but right when she said it and it came out, me and every hardworking mom I know, which is all of them, we're like, damn it, if we lean in any more, we're going to knock all of our teeth out. That's insane. Right. But yeah.
I do agree with you, definitely. There should be more women in coding and technology in the STEMs. It's a very controversial topic, actually.
It's so controversial. And as you're asking me about it, and as words are coming out of my mouth, I'm like, shit, I'm going to get in trouble with somebody about something. I mean, the women who do technical jobs are so qualified and so talented. Really? And I still really feel like in many, many cases, women still work harder than men in whatever job they're in.
Well, because they feel like they have to prove themselves.
Yeah, and I watch this happen around me all the time. Right. I watch women, and I experience it all the time. I feel like I have to reinvent myself pretty much every year.
Really?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, you can't rest on the article you did yesterday, or and that reinvention has been really hard. Okay, what now?
Right.
It used to be like, okay, covering consumer tech, that's enough of a niche.
I'm set, yeah. Exactly.
And that's not the case anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now there's a big push into tech culture. And so I constantly...
What do you mean by that? Expound on that.
So I used to, and I really miss, doing stories like 5 gadgets to help you protect your privacy more. Like gadgets. I used to do a lot of gadget roundups. And I personally love gadget roundups because I'm a gadget geek and I love trying all these things out and deciding which ones are the best and why. And
did you ever own the Google glasses?
I did.
Me too.
But I gave them away. I gave them to one of my assistants because other than being something we all talked about and made fun of each other about, it didn't have any real use in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually invested some time building those little apps for the Google Glass.
And what's ever happened to that?
Nothing. I think now they're moved the project to where they're going to use a contact lens.
Yeah.
That's the next level.
Which is okay. So I have a lot of thoughts about this, and I've tried other glasses that show you
like a screen
text. Yeah. So as you're walking across the street, you can look up and not down at your phone. Like, I like that.
I like that. That's why I got them, actually.
Yeah.
The Google Glass. I really like that aspect of it.
So that you can see without looking down at your phone and interact. But, how distracting. I've reached that saturation point where I don't want to be on all the time. Right. I don't want to be reachable all the time. I don't really care to see texts right as they first come in anymore.
If it's urgent.
Well, then hopefully somebody will call me. I know that's old-fashioned, but if you call me, I'll at least hear it. I have all the notifications turned off on my phone except the ringer at this point because I couldn't get anything done. And when I first started covering consumer technology, I bragged about what an incredible multitasker I was. I don't know if it's age or a burnout, device burnout, but I can't multitask to save my life. I can barely finish a sentence anymore. And I know that that's just from all that constant overload all the time.
Well, where do you draw the line between privacy and technology? What do you think about that?
I don't
What's
think
your
there
opinion
is.
about that? Yeah.
I don't think there is privacy in technology. I don't think there's a way to have fundamental privacy anymore with gadgets and devices in our lives. And I think that this year, California's already done something about that, putting stricter laws and guidelines and resources and rules in place. But I don't think we've even scratched the surface of what we have knowingly and willingly put out to the world about ourselves to be used in any way somebody can figure out how to use it.
Right.
And Cambridge Analytica is the tip of the iceberg. Another example of a story of that is just moving houses from one area of Oakland to another, and I'm in a more racially diverse area now. And all of a sudden I started getting Spanish-speaking commercials on my iPad. And it took me 3 months to figure out why and how. Nothing had changed except my physical location, and Spanish was being spoken around me more.
Right.
So was that a sign that my iPad was listening for more than its
Definitely.
wake-up word? Was that a sign of...
So the app probably picked up the voice, and they could do voice to text, and that text are made into keywords, and those keywords are put into their ad system, and the ad systems push out ads.
So what I've finally narrowed it, 3 months of talking to cybersecurity experts, talking off the record with folks at Apple. It doesn't seem like it was anything being spoken.
Oh.
It was IP address. All the folks working in and around the house were everything was in Spanish. Oh. And our IP address, they think either I got the next door neighbor's IP address, or we started all sharing these Spanish-related IP address.
Right. So it's interesting. There's a demographic for IP addresses, it seems like.
Isn't that crazy that companies, and then, so then it was like, wow, okay, so data selling companies are using every data point possible on me. So that could be my physical location, the apps, Waze. I use Waze. I can't drive without Waze. I mean, I really rely on Waze for everything.
I put the Shaquille O'Neal voice.
You
thing.
did?
Yeah.
That's so cool. I had Terry Crews for a while.
Right.
I had Arnold Schwarzenegger
Arnold.
until he scared the shit out of me. I was pulling onto the freeway. And for anyone who doesn't know, Waze is an app. Everybody listening to your podcast knows what Waze is, but I'm surprised how many people don't know what Waze is. I asked my own mom if she knew what Shazam was the other day, and she didn't, and I couldn't believe that. My own mother, who's a really tech savvy, had never heard of Shazam. But so Waze is a voice mapping app that tells you in real time what the traffic conditions are, and it'll guide you around traffic. It's brilliant. But Waze is looking into my location data all the time. Right. Whether it's on or off, I'm not sure. I don't want to get into any of that in this particular story, but that we give apps the ability to know our location all the time. It's great for us. It's convenient, but with that, we give up our habits, and we give up where we live, and what our shopping habits are, what our religious habits are, what our political habits are. So
I have a story about that. About 8 years ago, Samsung wanted me to work for them, to work on their smart TVs. And they said they were collecting millions and millions of records from the data being pushed out from the TVs. And so what they do is they're able to know if someone's in the room when a commercial is being played by detecting the light or the photons in the space. So they don't actually record you with their camera, but they record the light, the changes in the light. So if someone's in the room, the light changes. If someone's out of the room, the light changes again. So they were able to detect that and know what the conversion rates and the viewing rates were on commercials. And so 8 years ago, that's when I realized, wow, I'm never going to buy a smart TV again.
Yeah.
Because of all this data. So yeah, they definitely expanded from then to now, where the phones know where you're at. Like you said, with the IP addresses, they're listening to things that you say. A lot of times, I'm sure everyone's had the experience where they're watching something or they say something to their friend, and they go to their computer, and all of a sudden they have an ad
Yeah.
that's related to what they were talking about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that experience?
All the time.
What do you think about that?
Well, I've tried to figure out as a journalist why, how. Everybody says that these devices are only listening for their wake-up word. So how does that happen? And the ways that it happens are so vast and so eerily, freakishly right on the money. I mean, pretty much our gadgets can predict our behavior before we can.
Right.
Whether it was we hovered over that topic, whether we clicked on it or not, we hovered over it. So the ways that these companies are gleaning this data can be anything from your location, geolocation, from anything you've looked at online,
right.
anything from your browsers, any of the cookies. Every site now asks you if it can track you
right.
via cookies.
Right.
It can look at location and information from your photos. Anything that you grant access to your photos, which is half the things these days, or microphone. So I know there was research at Northeastern where Android apps they weren't listening to your microphone, but they were screen grabbing and in some cases real-time video grabbing
of
whatever you were doing in an app, whether you were logging on, they were getting your passwords, all kinds of things. Now the app companies were saying, hey, we're just doing this to better tailor things to you. And this is sort of everyone's answer of we do this because. And it might not be used for nefarious purposes, but it could be.
It could be. Yeah,
it could be. And that's the point. It could be.
Right. And
so wild.
It's
and there's no way to hide. Do you feel like you can hide from it?
If I really wanted to hide from this internet digital infrastructure, I probably could, but it would take me so much time to do it. And I would have to update it every couple of months to keep myself away from this. But so at the end of the day, it probably wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't be efficient for me to do it.
And
but
the fact that I can go to Walgreens and use my credit card to buy flu medicine, and then Facebook shows me an ad for flu medicine an hour later, like that's crazy to me. The fact that it happens in near real time is insane.
I had a story of my friend who actually Googled something like, he had some sort of a cough. He went to WebMD. Yeah. And then the next day he was offered like an appointment for a doctor for possible lung cancer treatment. And he was like, whoa, what's going on here? And so there, even these apps are even predicting that you might have certain ailments.
Well, that's all well and good when it's helpful. And I do think that it is helpful in a lot of cases.
Right.
Yesterday said it's too late. We can't go back. We can't get our privacy back. It's too late. We've been putting it out there for too long without knowing. And yeah.
I mean, would you want to? Do you think there's an advantage from putting your information out there? And NordVPN makes your online data unreadable to others, which means internet criminals and identity thieves are completely locked out from your private information. Once you get NordVPN, you're free to enjoy the internet in complete privacy. It has the security you need and the features you will love. Take it from me. As a seasoned software engineer, I would never think of connecting to the internet without using NordVPN. Go to evanweiss.com/NordVPN to get the special exclusive discount extended to my listeners, which you can only get by going to evanweiss.com/NordVPN. Millions of databases around the world aggregate this data to maybe give you good predictive things.
If my laptop or some app on my smartphone can tell me that I need to go get checked for lung cancer and that saves me from lung cancer, hell yes, it's great. If that's going to communicate to an insurance company that I might have a predictor for lung cancer and I won't get insured as a result, that sucks. Yeah. So I appreciate and enjoy the convenience that modern technology has brought to my life. At the same time, I lived a pretty decent, 20 years before any
Without
of this
it.
technology.
Right.
I remember when cell phones came out, and I remember saying, I don't want a cell phone because then I'll never be able to leave work. Now I'm living that. I'm never able to leave work ever, even though I work for myself for the most part. It's never done, and that's hard. And I think that this is the first year where I'm seeing a lot of sort of device reckoning, where we're saying, hey, this thing that was supposed to make our lives easier has actually made it much more complicated. It's put too much of our information out there for too many people to get a hold of. And, it's one thing to, God, all of this to sell me shit, that's one thing. But if it's all of this to skew elections and
What do you think about that?
I think that should be what a lot of the time, energy, and money is spent toward dealing with. I think that Mark Zuckerberg is really kidding himself if he thinks his site provides equal democracy to people around the globe. I think that it's time to reel it in and use the lesson, learn from all of these lessons. And I'd love to see a Facebook where just zero politics are allowed on it at all.
What do you think about cryptocurrencies? Do you think they're going to be part of the future? Or do you think there's going to be a different type of financial system?
I absolutely think cryptocurrency will be a part of the future. I have no clue what that will mean to the financial structure of countries and modern society. I have not invested in it in myself. I would have early on if I didn't think there was a way to lose, like so many other people, but I'm nervous about it. I think it's easy come, easy go at this point. So I'm a little nervous from a mainstream consumer point of view. At the same time, I wish I would have invested in it 5 years ago.
Now, what do you wish you knew back then that you know now before you started journalism?
Journalism? Oh, well, I started so long ago. I have to really think about that. Journalism versus tech journalism. I wish I had known patience. I wish I had stayed in the smaller markets a little longer and just been more patient with myself and my career.
Well, why do you think?
You don't know what you don't know until you realize. So just talking with people and I was in such a rush. I mean, this is sort of life advice to anybody in their early 20s. I was in such a rush to win Emmys and move up markets. And when I look back at my early career in journalism, some of the best stories I did were back then.
What was it? Because you had more freedom to work on the things you wanted to, or?
I wasn't so jaded, and I wasn't burned out, and I wasn't in a hurry. Well, I was in a hurry, but I wasn't in a hurry like I am today, where, I just have to we all have to crank out so much content in such a short amount of time.
If you're not making content today, you don't exist, really. That's my point of view.
But what's also been really weird about everybody now making content is that there's no journalistic ethics or standards. And so
That's
many
true.
people can't tell the difference
That's true.
between content
And news.
and news. And people will argue, hey, none of the mainstream news outlets really can tell the difference either anymore.
Right.
And what a lot of people don't know about these news outlets is that internally, they're just fighting for clicks all the time, too.
Right.
So when they see if BuzzFeed gets all the clicks, then everybody tries to do what BuzzFeed does.
What do you think about that? That is a really good question. Is it a moral question? Is it a legal question?
Yes.
What do you think could be done to change that? Should it be changed?
A lot of people talk about the death of journalism and how much in the toilet journalism is these days. And I think that there still needs to be a career called journalism. And I think that we still need to teach people who want to do that job how to be the best, most unbiased journalists they can possibly be, how to report facts. The problem is anything that comes through a human filter is going to be biased in some way, shape, or form.
I
I tend to bias things against my own views a lot because I'm so worried about being biased for my views. I would have loved to, sorry.
That's okay.
I would have loved to, this article that I'm working on, like, hey, do I finally have the smoking gun proof that our gadgets are listening to us all the time? I would have loved for that to have been the case. It's not, I can't prove that that's the case, and my story's not going to be that really good, oh my God, headline grabbing story as a result.
Exactly.
You know, the truth is always somewhat more complicated, really, no matter what you're talking about.
Do you think the government should regulate journalists and have them go through some sort of certification process where they have to learn and also get penalized if they ever report something that's false? And that way people know that this particular journalist over here is certified to give you the real news. That's
a really good question. That reminds me of, like, should people be forced to take a test and be certified before becoming parents? I think it's a great idea.
Me too.
But ethically, you know, you can't. It would be really difficult to police because you and I can walk out to the front of this house right now, see the exact same thing, and say different things about it, and it's our truth.
Exactly.
We don't mean to say something that's not true or remember things differently. Like, so there's that intent. I think if there's ever complete intent to misinform, you should be stripped. Yeah. I mean, and that's the problem with it. If you fake a source, if you lie about an experience and there's proof that you've lied, then I think what happens now is, you lose your credibility, therefore you lose your job, and you really, it's
they used
very
to do
difficult.
That before,
they still do that.
News agencies, when they find out their journalists lied about something, they usually fire them or reprimand them or make an update on a mistake. So what do you think about people like a John Lemon or a Sean Hannity who purport to be unbiased? Do you think they're being sincere, or do you think they just don't know it?
I think that news has become entertainment.
Okay.
And I think that those shows and those people and those particular broadcasters they are hired and paid to shock us, to...
like shock jocks.
Yeah, they really are. And I don't think... I mean, if you keep saying you're unbiased, you probably aren't. It's just like...
There's no need to say it. Yeah.
Right. And somebody on Facebook the other day, somebody put a thing about where all the journalists went to school.
Right.
And I didn't go back and double check whether that was even true. And it probably wasn't, because half the things people share on Facebook aren't even true. But, I think that I think it's important to know where the journalists learn to be a journalist. And although I don't think that's necessarily... I don't think if you went to Stanford versus USF like I didn't go to Stanford, I went to USF. I don't think I'm less of a journalist because of where I went to school. So I'm sort of circling back and wiping out my own case. I think there needs to be a job, and that is a journalism job. And there needs to be a more clear-cut set of ways for people to understand what they're watching.
Right. When I think about a journalist that's unbiased, people say none of them are unbiased. When I think about someone, I think about the late Jim Lehrer, who just passed away, who worked at PBS for a long time.
Yeah, or Walter Cronkite of the way back.
Yeah.
But I think I have known so many really wonderful journalists, and I still do today, whether it's over at KTVU, the local Fox news station. People didn't really understand you can be an affiliate and carry programming from a station. That doesn't mean that they have anything to do with the way you do or report the news.
Right.
Especially back then when, it was just that 10 o'clock newscast, and it was the number one primetime newscast in the nation. And, there were so many different fact checkers. That's not necessarily the case these days. Now you got to be first, and it is quite sensationalized. Yeah, and again, like that, so I would report sometimes just on what, hey, a police officer told me this. I'm not saying it, I'm telling you what the police officer told me.
Right.
Well, that was wrong, and I had to learn. That was one thing I wish I would have known early on in my career, that even if you get it from 3 credible sources, sometimes it's wrong. And that's your fault when it's wrong. Like, that would be my fault if I get something wrong, even if that was told to me several times by several people. And that does happen.
Right.
Yeah, but the folks I work with, whether it's USA Today or New York Times, they are just incredible journalists. And I don't see journalists trying to skew things on a daily basis. I just don't see that. That's just not my experience.
Right. And sometimes there's just bad apples that ruin the reputation for the whole agency sometimes, I think.
Well, I think that in that rush or that desire or that need to be relevant, for a news site to get all the clicks, it's a lot of clickbait headlines, misleading headlines. I click on a lot of those stories thinking, oh God, yes, I want to know that. And then there's no there in the article. But since those
Clickbait.
articles get clicked on so much, and it's not even necessarily like ad-based clickbait, it's now journalism-based clickbait.
Right.
It's what people click on, so that's what we all have to try to
Everyone's
emulate.
trying to compete. Yeah, talking about what you said earlier was that people back then would watch the news, say like the 8 o'clock news or the 5 o'clock news. And I felt like the culture of the country was more synchronized with each other across the nation. And I think now everything's very atomized because there's different news sources and you don't know who's lying, who's telling you the truth. Some people are just reporting things that you just want to hear because you think that's what you want to hear.
Right.
So it creates like almost like a balkanization psychologically all over the country, I think. And I think that's why a lot of people are not really clicking with each other anymore as much as they used to, I think.
Well, there's such an education gap, too. Just even on my own Facebook feed, the people I grew up with in my small town in Alaska, if they have never left Alaska, if they're maybe have a college degree, but a lot of them have high school,
Right.
is their education, and they're bright people.
Just different world.
They don't have the world experience. They they can't even fathom what goes on in this neighborhood that I live in West Oakland.
Right.
Can't even begin to fathom. Somebody on my Facebook feed that I grew up with in Kenai was complaining that Kenai's banned plastic bags, and what does this world come to? And it's so hard for me not to say that is the most ignorant freaking thing I have ever heard in my life.
Right.
But I have to, really understand that, and this all ties back into consumer technology. Like, so we are making all these decisions and creating all these gadgets and talking politics in San Francisco and New York, these coasts, but all that whole other part of the country may have never heard of it. They don't know. So I think, and I'm hopefully making some kind of sense here, but I think the education gap is one of the worst issues that we have in this country.
I agree.
Bar none. That education gap, that lack of empathy, the lack of understanding of other people's worlds and lives. Right. And I think that our culture has really gone to the what's in it for me. I don't know if this was different. It'd be interesting to ask my parents, was it like this in the 60s? Was it, like this so much in the 70s where we're just so all about ourselves?
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, I see a complete difference from back in the 80s even till now.
In San Francisco?
I grew up in LA, actually. I grew up in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And LA is different from what it was back then to what it is now.
Because San Francisco 20 years ago to what San Francisco...
Oh,
it's a whole so different. I think...
LA too. And LA in a good way. I mean, it's a lot safer now. Back in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't too nice. But now it's a lot safer. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I live now in a part of Oakland that... 5 years ago, I wouldn't feel safe living here. And not that I feel completely safe now, but I would not have moved here 5 years ago.
From Alaska to here?
No,
directly.
from another part of...
I know, but
oh, God. No, my parents are visiting us. They come for a couple months every winter, and it's still pretty hard for them to really wrap their heads around living in this much of an urban area.
Yeah, I've worked on several projects all over the country, including Texas and other areas. And I went from LA to Texas. And there is some sort of charm to that different type of lifestyle. It's a little more, I'll be honest with you, people seem to be more honest.
Yeah.
more sincere.
Oh, yeah.
In Texas,
Well,
to me,
pretty
it was
much
a great
the whole
experience.
world is more honest and sincere than
than
LA culture.
But that's the thing I
Because I
realized.
had to learn that, yeah.
That's what I realized.
Yeah.
I lived my whole life in LA for the most part, and San Francisco.
So
And
you just temper. People will say something, and you like take the 80 top layers of bullshit away, and
LA.
realize, yeah, they might like you, not
Exactly.
that much,
That's
but yeah.
That's a good description of an LA person.
Yeah.
So when I went to Texas, it was interesting. People wanted to bring me to their, hey, come over to my house and we'll have barbecue and we'll shoot guns. And I was like, I don't even know you. And people in LA, people, like you just said, 80% of it is bullshit, smoke and mirrors.
Right.
Yeah, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. You never hear from them again.
You're the best.
Yes, yeah,
I want to do all these projects with you.
Exactly.
Blah blah. Like
And
what?
it's bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And Texas, people were genuine. I made so many friends in Texas, by the way. But I do believe that.
And you would in Alaska too. Yeah. So the TV station, I was the North Idaho bureau chief for KXLY, the ABC station in Spokane.
Oh, nice.
So I did live in Spokane. Yeah, and I think that it would be tough for me to go live now in a place where I didn't see different colors of people walking down the street. And that's one thing that's pretty noticeable when you go to some of the different small towns in the world, that like, man, I could go a week with only seeing white people. I don't want that. Yeah, it's weird. It's funny kind of what becomes important to you depending on your different views. And I think that whether you break it down from an income perspective, a cultural perspective, how you break down different parts of society, I do think it's worth companies, large companies, huge companies, taking that more into account.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that they do. And that goes all the way back to the culture in Silicon Valley. Like, I just think that it's just way too insular, and it's its own little city of privilege. Yeah.
It's true. When I first moved to San Francisco, I got like backlash from locals. Like, first, it's like, you're in the tech industry, we don't want you. Number two, you're from LA, we don't want you. So it was kind of hard at first, years ago.
Harsh.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
Yeah.
they feel like locals, like teachers who are getting paid $30,000 a year, were able to afford their homes. And now that tech people have come in, they've risen the prices on homes, and now they have to get kicked out.
Now that no one can afford a home.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, that's part of the reason why we bought a house in West Oakland, near West Oakland first BART station after San Francisco. We're hoping that this area becomes an area that people want to live in someday.
I think it's a great neighborhood, honestly.
Yeah.
I used to live in Oakland by Lake Merritt.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
I love Oakland.
Yeah.
I love the hills.
I like the farmer's market. I love the, like I said, when I lived in Texas, I like that. But after when I came back, I'm like, I kind of miss this too.
Did you live in Austin?
I lived in San Antonio.
Okay.
Have you been there?
Yeah. It's cowboy town. I
love
it.
it.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's too hot in the summer.
It's too hot.
Me,
That's why I left, actually.
Yeah.
It's too humid and too hot.
But we looked at Austin for a potential place to move.
Round Rock and all that
stuff.
IBM's there.
Yeah, a lot of companies are moving there. A lot of, another place, my husband's brother lives in Raleigh-Durham area. And, we looked out there. And it's just a little, we're just not ready. That's one thing that once you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, it is really tough, I think, to live anywhere else because you have Goldilocks weather. You do have the touching points to all these different aspects and qualities and experiences of life. So
I did a couple of years ago travel around the country in an RV. I did it for 9 months. I quit my job.
Maybe that's why you're familiar.
And I would look out the window and look at a bird, kind of like this, and wonder, how is he free? How does he not have to pay bills to exist? What am I doing here? Even if I'm getting paid more than $250,000 a year to code, who cares?
Right.
My life is more valuable than a paycheck. And so I took the plunge and I quit my job. I bought an RV, put solar panels, and I traveled the country. And it was one of the best experiences in my life that I could never buy with any amount of money. It was the idea of an open road with no plan. Go anywhere, whenever I want. Park anywhere and go to sleep. Go to a national park. go. I went to the Grand Canyon. I went to Sedona, Texas, Louisiana, anywhere I wanted to go and spend as much time as I wanted. Do what I want, when I want, how I wanted. That to me was freeing.
Yeah, that's the
freeing.
That's the
it was an epiphany moment for me. Yeah, and like I said, that when I saw the bird, I know it sounds like a very strange story, but I'd be in my office, beautiful office, making great money.
Yeah,
it's just like, okay,
there's more to life than money.
I get all this money, but I get to spend. I get this money to spend it on things that I never have time to because I'm here in this box.
Right.
I love to code. I actually enjoy coding. If someone didn't pay me, I'd still do it for free. But there has to be a balance to life, and so I did that. I met people. I did things I thought I would never want to do, and I did them. I pushed myself out of my comfort zone, and I thought it was a really great thing.
That's interesting because I basically report and write stories and do TV segments, and nobody pays me to do it. I do it for the love of it and make money doing other things, but it's the same kind of thing. Like it's I can't give it up because it's what I love to do.
Yeah.
So
I love to do it, and it was real. I mean, it was great. I mean, I was many times in the middle of nowhere. Like I remember I went to Fort Sam Houston National Park, and it was beautiful. But it was in the middle of nowhere.
I love that.
And there were other people from Texas around there, and they were camping. And
were you by yourself?
I was with someone.
Okay.
Yeah, and then but I had more fun probably by myself. But I was with someone. It was fun at first, but close quarters.
But it's just like not to, keep making like circling back around to other stuff we've talked about. But as a woman, you can't really do that.
That's a good point.
Can't go around the country by yourself.
Some women do that.
Yeah.
But there's a security issue there.
Yeah, and I do know I have an aunt who will go with her horses and she'll go ride in places, but she has to be she'll come across men with guns and she'll have to say, oh yeah, well my gun, and whether she actually has one or not. Yeah, it's a just thing. A different experience.
Right. So like in that incident when I drove into Fort Sam Houston with my RV with California plates.
Shit.
I parked somewhere. I loved it. I thought it was so weird. It's so different. And I got to meet the guys and they're shooting these big guns. And although, most Californians would probably, have a heart attack at something like that, I thought it was an interesting thing.
It's pretty
cool. And
I
love to enjoy a new culture, the Texan culture, the cowboys and Indians. I love it. I love that stuff. Yeah. And, I feel like people love to travel to other countries and it's great. But there's a lot of great places in America to travel to.
I think you're exactly right. And I also think there are so many people who can't travel, whether it's within their own town. I know that there are people here in this neighborhood who've never been out of this neighborhood.
It's horrible.
Ever. There's
so many stories. I could write books and books about it. It was amazing.
That sounds incredible.
And it's something you could take with you for the rest of your life.
Well, my husband's going to be so jealous. The wanderlust is definitely kicking in for both of us right now. Yeah.
It's amazing. And so what I want to do is take it to the next level. Go to Europe for 6 months. Yeah. I always wanted to go to Africa. I've never been to Africa. I know you're going to Africa. Right?
I am going to Africa for the first time. Oh, and same kind of thing. It's a bucket list thing. I'm going February 17th to March 5th, 3 weeks. It's the first vacation that I will have taken in 10 years. I'm going there just to go and do safari, not to work.
Oh, you're doing safari?
Yeah, I'm going to safari in Kenya and gorilla trekking in Rwanda.
Wow.
No, I can't wait.
It's interesting.
So excited.
I just spoke to, a few weeks ago, Eric Edmeades, who's a speaker and an entrepreneur. Have you heard of WildFit?
WildFit?
Yeah. He actually invented this type of diet that's really good for people, and there's a lot of great results for it. Not only diet, but just general health. And he learned it from living with the Bushmen in Africa, and he developed it. And he just went to Africa and he invited me to go, but I couldn't go. Too busy on things.
Next time.
He had one ticket left. He's like, "You want to come to Africa?" I was like, "I can't right now." But
so the way my trip came about was a friend of mine up in Alaska over the summer. We were on our way to Salmon Fest, which is the little mini Woodstock of Alaska.
I love salmon.
So cool. And she travels. She's a prolific traveler. Our birthdays are the exact same day, but 1 year apart. She's a year older. So she's turning 50 this year. I'm turning 49. And I was asking her, hey, where is one place that you haven't traveled that you want to? And she said, Africa, and really want to go on safari. And I said, oh my God, me too. That's like the one place. I haven't been a lot of places, but that's really high on my bucket list. And as we were talking about it, she got a notification, a ping on a travel app, round trip airfare Seattle to Nairobi.
It's good that these devices are listening to us, right?
Seattle to Nairobi, $600. And she bought them on the spot. And I was trying to figure out how to get out of it up until about 3 weeks ago, because I can't take 3 weeks and not work and do this. And then all of a sudden,
you got to do it. Yeah.
I couldn't even fathom like traveling that long without my husband. And I told him that. And we both, my friend and I, tried to talk him into going. And he said, no, you really need to go and unplug and do this. And it's so true. I can't wait. Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm still got big old bruises from all the shots and stuff that I had to get. Like shots on, you have to get all the... Right. Yeah, but I'm interested not to work and how, even seeing if I'll be able not to work there. Like I'm going to take an iPhone, but I'm not going to take a tablet or a laptop, which is really freaky for me. But yeah, I'll be fun. I still write a lot of stuff down, so I'll probably be scribbling notes all the time. But
you're not going to be on LinkedIn at 2 a.m.?
I hope not. If I am, will you tell me not to be?
Yeah.
But I do often sleep with the phone charging next to my head. And every little, I have notifications turned off, but I check it in the middle of the night all the time. I listen to audiobooks to get back to sleep when I wake up in the middle of the night. I listen to podcasts a lot to fall asleep, to get back to sleep. So I have noticed, and it all could be coincidental, just with my life and my stress and my age, but I have noticed that I'm not as creative as I used to be. And if I can bear to leave my phone at home when I go out for a run in the hills, in the Oakland Hills and in the trees, I almost always have my most creative thought of that day or that week, or when I'm not around my gadgets.
Do you think technology stumps that creative flow?
I think it can if you don't have balance, and I don't think a whole lot of us have balance with it right now.
That's a good point.
I think we're just burned out. I am burned out,
I think most people are.
Yeah.
Have you heard of those things? I think they're called PCI. These are these retreats that they have here in the Bay Area, where people who are burnt out from technology go and remove all their devices and stay out there for 2 weeks.
Yep.
To disconnect from everything. And people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for those retreats.
I mean, isn't that what we should be doing? Like, I think about people making money that way, and it's just brilliant. Or the people who counsel you on how to be less addicted to your phone. Like, what a great job.
Stop using your phone.
Put the phone down. Yeah. Or people in the Silicon Valley working for these tech companies, sometimes in charge or the C-suite of these tech companies, paying other people to be gadget police for their kids. Like, brilliant.
Really? That's a thing?
Oh, yeah. That's a big thing. And yeah, it's, finding the right amount for your children, for yourself, all of that. We're learning as we go. It's really the Wild West still, and we're still in our infancy of that.
Yeah.
Well, I am super curious of all the really just wide spectrum across the map kinds of people you talk to, all the different people.
What are some of the things you're going to interview me? Okay.
Yeah, what are some of the things that you are huge takeaways? Because the people you talk to are amazing.
So my thing is, I believe that talking to people in all walks of life give you a unique perspective and take on life. I don't really focus like on a certain sector or anything like that, just like full spectrum.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much. So now ask me questions now.
So I agree with you on that. Just what's something that you've heard doing these podcasts and talking to this variety of people that really sticks with you?
I think the thing that sticks with me about interviewing these different people are how they're so smart, so intelligent, and their knowledge of what they do is so deep. And I think a lot of people don't get to experience that.
Yeah.
I really think that's the most important thing for me.
Do you think that there's room for this kind of long format conversational journalism?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think about journalists who are banned or deplatformed from the internet. There's a couple of journalists out there.
Well, the case of the woman at the Washington Post who tweeted Kobe Bryant, the article about Kobe Bryant and the sexual assault case.
Oh, yeah.
And she was suspended. And,
right.
I mean,
what do you think about that? You think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's insane. I think all of it's really crazy. I think that it was really... I think that she was passing on information pertinent to somebody's life. Was it, good timing? Should she have asked a higher up? Probably. But it does, that's part of the whole story. I think death threats and stuff like that, all the trolls that brings out is more what we should be concerned with. But
what do you do with trolls? What I do with them...
Oh, God.
Yeah,
do you have trolls?
I've gotten some things, but the reality is, I think, just ignore them. Mm-hmm. I don't really pay too much attention to them.
Yeah.
I can't spend too much time thinking about them.
No, it'll make you crazy.
Yeah. I think...
Somebody always hates you. Oh, yeah. Somebody always loves you. Somebody always hates you. Those aren't
even
the people
if it's
you
in
care
a job,
about.
even if you're family, there's always someone out there.
Somebody always loves you. Somebody always hates you.
Right.
Yeah.
So, exactly. So it's
they don't know you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't care.
Right.
What do you think about Julian Assange? Is he a journalist or is he not a journalist?
He's not.
You don't
I don't
think
he's a journalist. No.
Okay.
Is he a teller of truth? I don't know.
What isn't a journalist a teller of truth?
I think a journalist is somebody who has the skills and ability to report facts. And to your point earlier about a Walter Cronkite or a Jim Lehrer, to tell and disseminate information in a way that lets people make up their own minds. I feel like there's a pretty big slant to a lot of what Julian Assange does and how he does it, and it scares me.
So you think he cherry picks certain things
I do.
to give a certain narrative of his own liking?
Yeah, I do. And I think many journalists, using my little bunny ear air quotes, I think many journalists do that these days.
Okay.
And I do think there needs to be a difference in a journalist and content.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's not a journalist.
I don't consider Julian Assange a journalist. No.
Do you think he should have been arrested though?
God, I don't know. I haven't thought about Julian Assange in a long time. I haven't thought about this, so I don't want to say like yes or no. I just don't know. I think I would need to go back and revisit parts of it because I haven't thought about it in a long time. Probably, I am not all for arresting people. I don't really know all the ins and outs. I don't remember a lot of the ins and outs of that story. What do you think?
I think if journalism is truth-telling, he told the truth, right?
Yeah.
But I do believe, like you mentioned, that if you're cherry-picking things to give a certain narrative in your advantage or whatever you think your side is, then is it really truth-telling?
I think that's dishonest.
That's the question, right? There's like a plausible deniability there that people wiggle in and out of. But yeah, I think. What do you think about Edward Snowden? And what do you think about the idea that someone comes to you as a journalist and says, "Hey, I have information."
It happens all the time.
In San Francisco, someone who works in the city, and they're doing X, Y, and Z. Now, as a journalist, would you go out there and write an article about it, even though it might out someone that's very prominent in the city, or what would you do in that case?
If there was clear-cut evidence and proof that I felt going through my sort of journalistic markers of what constitutes enough evidence and proof, I would look into it. There's always, no matter what, two sides to every story.
Absolutely.
And what I have found a lot of times when I am really uncovering some awful stuff about sometimes awful people, I almost always feel sorry for that person. I think that there's a part of humanity that a good journalist does feel like, does take into consideration and feel, is it my role to ruin this person's life? Is what they're doing so bad that I need to have the world know about it. Like, I think that it's a check and balance.
Right. So what would you do?
Yeah, absolutely. If there was somebody doing something, I would look into it. And if I found enough evidence and clear cut, and I would interview all the people. Like, I wanted to do this story without talking to Apple because it took me a week to get to the right people to talk to at Apple for the story I'm working on right now about whether my iPad is listening to this conversation or not. I'd love to do that story without Apple, but that's irresponsible as a journalist to do it without getting something from them. And yes, it's a pain in the ass. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it doesn't fit my narrative of wanting to say that my iPad is listening, but that's my job. And I'm doing it without getting paid, which is even crazier, but that's my responsibility. And I wish that more people felt that way. Or I wish that more people in the general public knew that a real journalist has that ethical responsibility. So did I answer the question at all?
Yes, you did. Yes.
It's hard for me. I love how we're just having a conversation because it's hard for me to answer questions.
Yeah, that's why the more we do it, the more like there's this flow, and that's actually the good stuff. So
yeah, I have more questions for you.
Yeah, so go ahead, ask me.
Is this journalism?
It depends if we're all truth-telling, right?
I don't think journalists have the ability. I mean, you're only as good as your sources. You're only as good as the information that you have.
What about an opinion piece? For example, you don't.
Yeah.
What if you don't talk to Apple, but you have your own opinion, and based on certain information, you could still make an article?
I think it needs to be a clear-cut op-ed. I think most people. I talk to a lot of young people, my own child and stepchildren included, that really don't know the difference between an op-ed and a real news piece. And they're become really jaded and turned off by journalism or by mainstream news outlets as a result. So I think that there needs to be more more clear-cut examples of which is which.
It goes back to education. It's a really important thing.
Yeah.
Lots of people don't even know what the Congress is. I feel like a lot of people failed civics in school.
Well, a lot of people don't understand what's in it for me with civics.
Right.
I don't care who gets elected. I don't care. Am I gonna pay more in taxes? Like, until they can really circle it around to what's in it for them. Yeah, it is. It's tough to get people involved. I don't.
That's why clickbait wins and all this kind of stuff, right? Because they're like, oh, someone's getting impeached, but hey, 7 ways to do X, Y, and Z. I want to go there because what's in it for me? There's something in there for me, right?
Right. The story was circulating on my Facebook today about Nancy Pelosi using $150,000 in pens to sign the impeachment papers. Like, come on.
But that headline gets clicks.
Right. And, a lot of people don't. I use Snopes all the time. I really believe in them. A lot of people don't. So where do you find the truth?
Have you ever interviewed Nancy Pelosi?
I have, not recently, but back in the day, I used to be around her quite a bit.
Do you think she's a lot different now than she was back then, or she's always kind of been the same?
I haven't been in the same room with her one-on-one or even in a crowd in at least 3 or 4 years, so I don't know recently, but I think that she is still the same person, that she still works from a code of ethics and responsibility that she always has. Boy, politics sucks. Yeah, American politics is the war. It's so funny. I feel like, have you seen that comedian Ronnie Chang and his special on Netflix and everything? America sucks. Politics suck. Democrats suck. Republicans suck. I feel like I say that a lot and think that a lot these days. But I think that
I think everybody feels the same.
We need to reboot politics, and Obama spoke to that a lot. And I saw the 2 town halls that he did at Facebook, and really could hear and feel that sense of, wow, I had no idea how mired in politics was. And it's 2020. Things need a reboot.
Any questions for me anymore?
Gadgets. We didn't talk about gadgets. I want to hear about what you're really into gadget-wise. Like, so you worked on Google Glass. You were a glass hole for a while.
Exactly.
What's the one gadget
I've had people try to take him off my head.
Are you serious?
In Venice Beach, I remember I was out there and I had my Google Glass and the police were there, and I guess 2 people were fighting, And I was just looking at the police doing something, and I think one of the police officers were like, "You, what is that?" I'm like, "This is just Google glasses. Turn it off." I'm like, "What's not on? Take it off, or I'll take it off." I'm like, "Okay." It's so interesting the reaction that people had to me wearing Google glasses. It was I got like really bad. Some people were cool, like younger people were like, "Oh, that's cool." Older people in West Hollywood, I was kicked out of the store, and he's like, "I'm the owner of the company. I don't want you recording anything with that. Get out of my store." I'm like, "Okay." Another time, I went to a restaurant, and this older couple behind me said, "Are you spying on us with those?" And I'm like, "No." So the whole time, I got these glasses at the time. So I have a friend who worked at Google before I started working there, and I had them, and I thought they were really cool. It's a really great thing. But the psychological, social impact that these wearable gadgets have, which is something I'm really interested in. I love the idea of wearable gadgets. Yeah. But the psychological impact they have and the societal impact are very interesting, to say the least. So.
I was really interested when out of our hand, and I think that there is room for glasses, but also hearables. We're hearing more about that buzzword, the little gadget in your ear that's giving you that same kind of
Alexa
information.
is going to be in your ear.
Yeah, all of that. But I wish that there were earrings, smart earrings. I could just put little earrings on and
they would do what?
And answer phone calls, give me all my news and information and whatever, let me hear things. But I own the Bose glasses, the stereo glasses, awesome. And I really like those. It is weird to walk down the street talking to no one and, using that as my...
Do they have the same thing that the Google glasses had where... Like the microphone was touching your skull bone?
Yeah.
Same thing?
Yep, exact same thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but I have not been super impressed by any one particular gadget, although there were a couple medical gadgets I liked this year at CES, but I'm not seeing anything that's wowing me. That might be device burnout. I wish I could see things the way with fresh, new, unjaded eyes. Is there anything that you're super psyched about, gadget-wise?
Wearable technology. Really?
Like the Levi's jacket.
What's that? Tell me about that.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's the tech is embedded in your jean jacket, so you can have Bluetooth. Your right arm can vibrate to turn right, or wow. Wearables. Is there anything in particular, and why? Like wearables for what purpose?
Wearables. I was thinking of making my own jacket. There probably is one now. I thought about this a couple of years ago. Where you would use, Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
It's a little computer the size of a credit card.
Yeah.
Where you would have that sewed into it somehow in a really nice way. And it would have connected to it sensors that would detect temperature. And based on the temperature, it would heat your core body, and it would detect your core body. And you have like a climate controlled jacket.
Okay, so...
There probably is something like that.
Something like that exists. Ray-Ban was trying to do it.
Oh, nice.
But
so that would be great for you're out in the snow, you're out in Alaska, you're catching fish, but your body temperature is always...
Even in Africa, it cools you off when you're too hot, but then at night when it's freezing, it warms you up.
Climate control, it's like a survival thing, right? Even soldiers could wear it, anybody really. So I was thinking of something like that. That's something that excites me.
The hoodie, the bulletproof hoodie...
I haven't seen
it's a similar concept that like just have your clothes protect you in ways that they haven't before, have them communicate in ways they haven't before.
Right.
But
What are you excited about? What are the gadgets that you wish existed now that don't exist, and you think in the future might be?
I wish there was a GPS tracker for my reading glasses.
Or for keys?
There are little tags you can put on them, but I wish these were even smaller. And they do have one that you can put like on sunglasses. It's about this big, but it doesn't work great, and the batteries always die. But I wish that, let's see, I used to really want a very simple way to, if I'm upstairs, talk to somebody downstairs without an intercom system, without smart speakers, like really, really simple. But I feel like smart speakers pretty much do that now. Something that makes me not lose my reading glasses all the time.
Okay.
Would be great.
So how would that work? It would be like, you go on your phone. What if you lose your phone?
Yeah, see, that's the problem. It has to be
It's a recursive.
And there's so many things, like right now, we only have one thermostat in this house, and it's right over there. So anytime we turn the heat on, it's 500 degrees upstairs. It's still kind of cool down here. So I would love an easy, seamless way that I could have sensors in each room. Now, Honeywell does something like that, but you have to be on the whole Honeywell ecosystem. So I wish, even Sonos, so we have Sonos soundbars, Sonos speakers. I don't really like using this as my remote control to turn the TV up and down, using my smartphone as that. So simple little things like that are attractive to me.
That make life easier.
Yeah, I really want my devices to make my life easier, so I'm always interested in ways. A lot of people say a gadget does that. It's not very often the case.
Right.
We also really need smart lunch boxes. We need the lunch box that will heat your stuff up or cool it down automatically. Why don't we have that yet?
A thermometer in there. Right?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, this year at CES, Bridgestone reinvented the wheel. They made a wheel that can't go flat. Why has it taken this long?
Oh, I've seen those.
It's prototype.
I've seen those. And they're kind of like little ribs around kind of like spokes.
Yeah, so more of that.
I like Bridgestone. They have really cool stuff.
They do. It's really interesting to see how these companies, like even like a Charmin, Procter & Gamble, like how they're thinking about technology in different ways. You know, like the little Charmin robot that brings you a roll of toilet paper when you run out.
Right.
I mean, that's practical. That's a problem that everybody has at least a couple times in their life, you know, so I'm interested about that. I'm really interested in health technology and how I was talking with guys the other day that made a stethoscope that can listen to your heart and, like Shazam, tell you if you have a heart murmur, AFib, heart, you know, it listens to your different rhythms of your heart.
It's like an EKG, portable EKG.
In a stethoscope.
In a stethoscope, interesting.
So it's a smart stethoscope, and the idea is that you don't use it at home, doctors use it, but the MedWand at CES, you could have that same smart stethoscope technology embedded in the MedWand. You have it at home, it communicates to a medical professional anywhere in the world that can say, you're having arrhythmia, you need to go to an emergency room right now. Or, you know, there are...
What do you think about the idea to load balance the availability of professional input for your particular situation? In other words, like this is a beautiful example. Something's wrong with you, and there's electrodes or devices that are connected to you, and you could get 1,000 opinions from doctors all over the world. What do you think about that? Do you think that would increase the quality of life for individuals, or do you think eating less burgers will?
Both. I think.
I love burgers, by the way.
Same. I love hamburgers. Love them.
The beef type too.
All about the beef. I think that if you could make a pill that would exercise and eat right for you, that would be a wildly successful product.
Oh my God, that would be
right. That would
dream
be
come true.
But we don't have that. We have free will, which we also in America covet.
Thank God.
So yeah. So although it's funny, so I'm going to go off on a complete tangent right now. We think we have free will.
I like tangents.
But we have these smartphones that are collecting data points every single thing we do, say, or location that we go to. How is that free will? We're not free when we're allowing something to collect all of our personal data and sell it all the time, you know, and use it for whatever way they want to use it. So that's tangent, but because we're all about freedom, and yet we very, very quickly, easily, and you know, knowingly and unknowingly give away that freedom. So back to the question.
Well, what do you say about companies? I'll play a devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Who say, like Facebook, you don't have to use our service. You go somewhere else.
That's true. I think that that's absolutely true.
But everyone's doing it anyway. There's nowhere to. There aren't real alternatives, I think. That do not collect data. Yeah.
And we're also, so many of these companies had psychiatrists and psychologists use very addictive means to get us to like Facebook. I go on Facebook really, truly to check out what my friends and colleagues and family are doing. Facebook should make it easier to just keep in touch. They say they do. It's not easy. We get ads, all of that. I would rather pay $2 a month to not get any ads on Facebook than to have to see ads. And they tell me the reason they haven't done this is because then someone who couldn't afford $2 per month wouldn't have the same experience as me.
Right. Have you ever bought anything from a Facebook ad or a Google ad?
I actually have. I bought the Quip toothbrush is the best thing I've ever bought, ever, from any kind of Facebook ad or Google ad. I've bought a lot of things that haven't been very good, and I'm trying to think of. I bought socks, Bombas socks, also on Facebook. So yeah, I mean, I do like the convenience of it showing me the things I want to see before I have to go search all over for them. But back to your question about 1,000 data points. I mean, that's kind of what Google is already. We all get diagnosed by Dr. Google on a daily basis,
Dr.
for better
WebMD.
or worse, right? And I have been able to diagnose little things here and there before doctors could, or being frustrated that I keep going and nobody knows why I have this bump on my face, and finally I Google it and figure it out for myself.
Doctors don't like that.
No, they hate that. But to Ronnie, back to, comedian Ronnie Chang's thing about, who knew that putting all of the knowledge into the palm of our hands or at our fingertips would make us really freaking stupid, but that's kind of what it's done. So if there's a way to help a doctor diagnose a medical issue and help you get access to that medical care you need, I'm all for it. But we haven't figured out a clean way to do that. And oftentimes, the problem with having medical diagnostic tools in your hands is that you don't seek the care that you need. And then there's that whole problem of being able to pay for it.
Right.
So it's not an easy answer or solution.
What do you think about Tesla?
A lot of my colleagues have them. And I thought it was really interesting recently. One of them was trying to drive it to CES, and it needed an update. And he went to update it, at his hotel, and overnight, but the computer wasn't updated by the time it came time to leave in the morning. They're still glitchy.
Right.
And my iPhone is still glitchy. My iPad is still glitchy. So realizing that too is kind of scary. I've ridden in self-driving cars, and they're much better drivers than me, but I'm still a little nervous about a lot of that.
What do you think is the future of virtual reality? Do you think we're going to live in a dystopian world where we essentially live in a capsule and everything in the world is kind of projected to us? And do you think it's a good thing for society?
No, I don't think that that's a good thing for society. I think some people will absolutely live like that. I think some people do live like that. Already. I know
a few, actually.
Yeah. And I would be hard-pressed to ever leave my couch if I wore the VR headsets enough. They are incredible, and the technology is incredible. What I think their strengths are for teaching emergency room doctors, like pediatric emergency room doctors, to go through scenarios in as much of a real situation as possible without having to practice on kids.
Right. My crazy idea is to use VR and send a rocket into Mars, and with VR, build a habitat with robotics. Send a robot out there and have the robot be connected to your VR system. Say, all right, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put that there, and start building some sort of habitat.
Then would you go?
And then, have like an army of robots, and everyone's on VR building like some sort of city, and then we go there. So kind of have the robots set everything up for us. I know
it's
it sounds
like
crazy,
real life Minecraft.
Exactly.
Kind of like
it's
that.
It's kind of like Avatar.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
I wish we could do more with VR to help educate people. So if somebody says, I don't understand why, an African American wants these privileges that I as a white man can't get. Well, here, let's put VR on. Let's take you for a stroll down the street as a black man.
Wow, that's interesting.
Because that's a really different experience from your stroll down the street as a white man in many, many cases. There was VR at Sundance 4 years ago, where it showed you a VR perspective from a cop and from an unarmed black man in a fatal shooting.
Wow.
And boy,
That's really cool.
it was so cool. And I wish everybody had to watch that. I really. And
That
you're
is really cool.
as you're going through it, I mean, your heart's racing. Like you can all of a sudden see how these horrific mistakes happen from both perspectives. That is the true value and meaning for me of
That is a
VR
really good point.
versus sitting on your couch and getting everything delivered to you.
Educational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Empathy, education, life experience, that if you don't have enough money to, or any means to travel.
VR will close that gap.
Yeah, VR could. And then I'm seeing VR used for elderly who are shut in and locked in to give them more of an experience of the world, taking them back to their home they grew up in. And it's just so sweet and precious and
I
meaningful.
love that idea. I think VR, I love everything to do with education. Education is the most important thing to me. And not only academic education, but life education.
Yeah, life experiences,
Life
right?
experience, right. And so I remember putting on a headset, a VR headset, and it was, the content was what it is to live as a schizophrenic. And with the whole earphones and everything.
that.
And by the end of it, my heart was kind of pounding. I was like, wow. And you have more empathy.
Right.
And so when you interact with them, you understand in a smarter way what they're going through, and you're able to become a better person interacting with people like that too.
So racial issues that could really help with. We live in an area here in West Oakland. There's a lot of homeless people all around.
What do you think about the homeless problem in the Bay Area?
Oh my God,
And
I
Los
think-
Angeles is really bad too.
And I travel a lot to Chicago,
Is it
New
bad there?
York, Atlanta. It's
It's there. It's bad.
everywhere. I've never seen so many homeless people on
Me
the
neither.
streets of New York. Again, it's a very multifaceted problem, but I think that companies around here, like Apple, the earnings was how many billions of dollars? I think, they've committed $2 billion toward finding some solutions to this rampant homelessness.
Do
The
you think
homeless
there's
situation, I don't think it's enough.
But do you think it's a financial solution, or do you think it's a mental health or behavioral
It's
education? housing?
multifaceted. It's some of it is so much of it is mental health. I think a lot of it is resource mental health. Imagine a drug addiction. So I just think
It's part of mental health.
right.
It's really
It's
connected.
multifaceted, and if your brain doesn't work in a way that functions well in society, what is your alternative?
What happened to
if you
psych
don't have-
wards though? They used to have psych wards.
Well,
People-
yeah,
They
the
use
government-
jails now for psych wards, I think.
If you're lucky. Really?
Really? No, you're
Because if
right.
you're lucky, what are your choices? There's a gentleman living on the ground across the street who is obviously schizophrenic. Where does he go? And a lot of people that I've spoken with over the years who are homeless, if you can't go to a shelter, if you get abused in a shelter, what are your alternatives? If I didn't have the family that I have, where would I go? What would I do? Where would
That's
I
why
be?
families are so important to me.
Yeah.
I think the idea of having families really help a lot.
And community, I think, has to create
And community.
family.
Community is an extension of families. Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like big family. Yeah.
So that's the scary part. If you put on VR glasses and you're living all alone, where's your community? Where's your family? Gamers, a lot of gamers and people who are really, people on Reddit, that's their community. That's their family.
Right.
So there are often pros and cons to all of it.
Yeah, but I feel like people make artificial communities all over the world,
Yeah?
which they have no contact with. And so at
Trolls.
the end of the day, what value does someone who lives in Brussels, even though you have everything in common, what kind of impact does that have for you in the real world? I think none. It really does none. I feel like people are looking for something, the grass is greener on the other side through the internet to connect with people they think they might find. But why don't they talk to their, for example, neighbors? I think when I lived in places like Texas and small towns, people do that. Like when I lived in Texas, my neighbor introduced themselves, and if ever you're gone, we're going to look over your home. And I thought that was really great. And when I lived in LA, nobody talks to you, especially if you live on the same block, and you'll never see them again. And so, what do you think about that? Do you think people should focus more on organic, local communities, or in internet, digital, artificial ones?
I think it's hard to be an either or situation because I think a lot of people get something from their online community that they lack in real life.
Right.
I think if you go all or nothing, toward that, though, that it's detrimental no matter how you slice it. I mean, I think it is important to be able to speak to people. It drives me crazy when my daughter won't pick up the phone at me. You have these generations of kids who really
Just
don't
text.
know how to talk on a phone, or they text all the time.
Like, you called me? Why'd you call me?
Oh man, right? My daughter used to hate to talk on the phone, and finally she's getting better at it. But I think that, I use Facebook. Like, my best friend died recently, and I made that public announcement on Facebook and got a lot of comfort and solace from the reaction to that I didn't necessarily get in this world, because nobody really knows him. And, other than my family, who's incredible. But you don't walk down the street and say, everybody be nice to me for a second because I'm going through something really shitty. Right. And you can have that moment on Facebook that if all the stars are aligned, it works that way. And that's the magic of a Facebook or an Instagram, or not so much Twitter anymore, but that's the magic of those online communities.
Really political. It's everyone. It seems like they hate each other there.
Yeah, it's easy to hate. It brings out the best and the worst, unfortunately.
Yeah, when Kobe Bryant just died, I saw really nasty stuff on Twitter from people that I followed and I actually liked, and they said some really nasty things. I'm like, wow, it's kind of strange.
How pressured do you feel to be on social media in your line of work?
I have to. If you're not on social media, you don't exist.
Yeah, I'm barely on it anymore.
Yeah,
I use it very sparingly now because I got so burned out. And I could hire somebody to do it for me, but then it's not me.
Exactly. And they know it's not you.
Yeah.
There's something about it that the way you write, the way you think, nobody could really replicate another human being.
But that is a full-time job.
It is a full-time.
I don't know how you do it. I don't know how people do it.
2 a.m, I'm there.
Yeah. And what happens? I know what happens when you're not. That's there comes a day when you can't be everywhere at once. Damn.
What do you think about the idea that when people pass away, they're going to create artificial holograms of you with an AI that's supposed to repeat and know everything you've ever liked on Facebook and Google and everything? What do you think about that? Do you think it's a moral thing, a good thing? Do you think people might get comfort from that, like from someone who's passed away, a family member?
I would love to talk
to someone who's passed away.
My friends and family who aren't here anymore. I would love that.
Like, hey, what do you think about this?
Or just to hear their. I saved voice messages, and just recently lost a best friend, and first thing I did was go back and I had 5 voice messages that I saved immediately because I don't want to not ever hear his voice again. So I think that that's precious. I think it's a precious way to remember somebody, like a photograph or a video or a, voice recording is. I think that's just kind of that next...
It's the next level of...
evolution of memories. It's weird. It's all weird. But it's all weird. Thinking about making video phone calls was like weird stuff of crazy science fiction, right? Now, time travel, that is something I would love to do.
Really? Where would you go?
Oh, God, if I could... It depends. If I went back and talked to myself younger, I would. Just tell myself to chill out and not worry about all the things that you worry about when you're a teenager. I'd go back to a few weeks ago, the last time I saw my friend, and I don't know, would I hold on a little longer in that hug? I'm not, In terms of periods of life, oh my God, I'd love to go back to 1888 and see what was going on here when this house was built.
Do you know what happened?
No, I know nothing about it, and I'd love to find out things like that, but...
Do you have records of the owners from back then?
No.
You can't go back?
I think we will. We haven't yet.
What was Oakland like in this area back then?
This area of Oakland, this was where the east to west railroad ended. Oh. So this was where anyone moving out west, this was the end of the railroad. So
all the way from New York to the West Coast, this was...
And if you haven't seen that old railroad station, you should. It's the same person who the same designer of Grand Central Station designed this, and it's incredible. It is completely surrounded with homeless camps. It's just a few blocks from here, and it's beautiful. But this was where a lot of Black people moved, maybe up from Texas, out from the East. And this was in this area, the first Black Porters Union was formed.
A lot of
so
history.
This a lot of history. Huey Newton died right around the corner from here. I mean, it's a lot of history, and it's a lot of Black culture and Black history that, being the white gentrifier moving into the neighborhood, I really hope doesn't go away. I hope we for that, and how to do it in a way that is responsible is our daily.
6 months ago, I remember I interviewed locals in Oakland and Lake Merritt, and the number one thing they would all talk about is gentrification. I was like, what are you interested in? They just kept talking about that. I thought it was kind of strange.
Well, it's scary. I mean, if .com millionaires now come and buy up these houses, which they are.
Oh yeah, I know people who work out in Silicon Valley fly with a helicopter and say, I want that one, I want that home over there, I want that home. And it just.
And so does that mean that we love our neighbors? We've met our neighbors and love our neighbors. Does that mean they don't have a place to live anymore? Like, that is a huge concern. We are so many decades into pushing people out, and that's a big concern
Capitalism.
for us. My daughter was very concerned about us moving here as gentrifiers and doing something bad for this community, and we haven't figured out how to make our presence here be a good thing for this entire community, but we're working on figuring that out, and we're talking to everybody who will speak with us about it.
Cool.
About that.
I think that, although I did have that interview a couple months ago, I think people should be allowed to live anywhere they want, and I don't think what your skin color really should matter. I think if you're white, black, purple, green, you want to live somewhere, I feel everyone should just welcome each other. That's the way I think, though.
I think so many of us.
Maybe I'm too hippie, though.
Well, so many of us think that, but then that's not a reality. Like, if you grow up, there's projects right on the other side of the elementary school here.
Right.
If you grow up in those projects, there are people who have not left this 8-block radius ever in their lives.
Right.
They only know poverty. They only know abuse. They only know the criminal system. Like, what if that was your only experience? What if you didn't have a mother and a father and nobody ever taught you right from wrong? Like, it's hard to put.
To mesh,
It's really difficult to think about, how the color of your skin does play a role in your life experience, no matter what.
I remember in Venice Beach when I first moved there, Google had purchased an area because Google's in Venice Beach, and so they needed lots of tech workers there, and they
call that Silicon Beach?
Yeah, Silicon
area?
Beach. Yeah. So they got these projects where there used to be impoverished people. They bought the place and they remodeled everything and they made them into really fancy apartments. And I lived there. I think for a 500 square foot apartment, I was paying $3,500 a month or something. But half of it was redone, and then the other half still had the people who were there in the projects. And I'd constantly, and they had security there, so they would keep the poor people out of the other people's area. And I work hard for my money. I didn't mind paying for what I was paying, but at the same time, I know this lady that was there with her child in a stroller, and she wanted to use the facilities in the new and improved area, like the pool and the jacuzzi and all the cool stuff. And security guards would come up to her and say, "You can't be here. You need to go back." And so I understand that's kind of weird, but where do you draw the line? I mean,
yeah,
I don't. It's just
I'm more socialist in that I think there should be a greater equality in resources, whether it's education or healthcare.
I think education is the biggest thing. I agree with you on that. Education is a big divider between people.
Huge. It really is. And that's not to say you can't be brilliant not having a college education, because I know many brilliant people who don't have a college education. Right. But you do have to have access. Just, can you imagine what it's like? I have always had enough food to eat. Can you imagine what it's like not to have food? Right. Not to have water? people in
that
this area are living with that and and those daily stressors
100%.
and that's rough.
But at what point, I know these are controversial topics.
They're so controversial.
I usually don't talk about them.
This is what we talk about. So this is pretty much in this house. I think it's the house brings it out in you because this is what we talk about, especially when my daughter's home from college. This is what we talk about all the time.
Really, I love
it.
But it's good. It's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like people just judge everybody else too much, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's controversial, though. I think if it goes one way, one direction, then it's okay. But if it's the other way, it's not okay. And I think that double standard, I think, is hypocritical. I think people should be allowed to live anywhere they want. They shouldn't be judged.
You know, I'm almost 50 years old, and I have worked more than one job since I was 7. And people often tell me I work like freakishly hard, and I do. Like people are like, "Oh, how'd you get where you are?" Work harder than everyone else.
That's where I come from. That's where I come from. I meet people who come from a family like you mentioned who sometimes didn't have food on the table. Sometimes their electricity was shut down, and I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
But someone else has. But they're incredibly successful because they worked hard as an individual. They worked the question is...
sometimes hard work isn't enough. And sometimes, and especially where mental illness comes in or any kind of...
Well, mental illness is different.
Or just being on the spectrum, just being othered in some way that you can't really work all the time. Like that, I don't really want to discriminate against somebody who's not phically able or mentally able to work as hard as me.
So generally speaking, exceptions excluded.
Yeah.
I believe that most people are able to work themselves out of a bad situation.
I don't know. I was watching one of those shows about like life behind bars, and you see these kids who are raised in crime and poverty, and I mean they don't even know how. Can't even get that far. You know, if you're I never had to work only minimum wage jobs and try to get ahead that way. I'm not sure what I would have done if I had. You know, I had the ability to talk my way into a decent paying job or something. So it's hard because
you probably would. I mean, you probably would. I mean, if you were given a minimum wage job, you probably would have gotten a better one because you would have worked harder.
I used to cover various homeless issues a lot as a reporter, and you know, it's just really complicated. I mean, I remember one man telling me once that like that bird that you saw outside your window, he didn't want keys because keys meant a certain sort of lack of freedom for him. Was he saying he was homeless by choice? No. Was he making the bet? Like he sort of made it into something sustainable for him. But I don't think anybody chooses to be homeless.
There's people who like it though. They're beach bums.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've heard them. I don't know.
Like those surfers in Santa Cruz, they're like, well, they're not technically homeless.
Right. And do they have homes to go home to when mom and dad will take them back in? Or, you know, like, God, I just can't imagine.
You're talking about someone who has no options, that they just have to be on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are times in my life when that could have happened had I not had
a family
or, you know, there was a week or two as a struggling single mom that, you know, thank God, I actually broke into my daughter's piggy bank, you know, when she was 3 years old to buy groceries once, you know, like we're all closer than we think. There are moments that we're closer than we think, and that if our families or friends or people weren't there to support us, who knows? You know, there but by the grace of God kind of thing. You know, I do feel very privileged. I do feel incredibly lucky for so many reasons, but also just lucky that it's in my DNA to work really hard too.
That's what I believe in. That's my perspective. I believe that, you know, there's a DNA for hardworking people. But like you said, sometimes that's not enough in certain circumstances.
Or what if you're too ADD to be able to do a job from the morning till the afternoon?
Oh, that sounds like me.
Yeah. I mean, there's this whole world of us highly functional ADD people, but, we have managed
Make it work.
to make it work in this society. Could you make a living from this?
Yeah.
From podcasting?
Yeah. It's part.
I
It's
want to know
actually,
how to do that.
It's a component. it's a whole thing. Yeah.
So I want to learn that skill from you.
That's actually that's the whole thing of what
because
I
this
do.
is the coolest thing ever. Just
great,
to be able
right?
to sit and
Have a
talk
well, that's
and
the whole
ask
point.
questions and feel. A lot of times in
Interviews.
in casual situations, I'm very apologetic. Like our neighbor was here yesterday, and I want to ask all these questions, but I don't want to be rude or pushy or I know sometimes have to turn the reporter brain off. I love their permission to just talk.
Oh, I love it.
And
That's actually why I love to do it too.
And I really do feel like I live in this kind of silo of working at home in my pajamas. So I love hearing that something helps somebody or resonates with somebody.
According to the American Stress Institute, work is a number one stressor of American adults in America of stress. So work stress is the biggest component of stress in general.
Yeah.
And stress is linked to, 6 different major diseases: heart disease, lung disease, all this other stuff.
I don't have answers to a lot of these issues, but I'm talking about them, and I think that's a big part of the next step in trying to find the solutions.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to travel to Europe. I do want to go to Egypt and see the pyramids. Have you seen that?
No, and
I want to do
love
that.
to.
What,
Yeah, I mean,
what's been your experience when you
We looked
travel?
at going to the Republic of Congo, and I finally decided wasn't safe enough for me and my friend who's a woman, white. Well, she's actually native Alaskan, but she looks, you can't really tell. And we decided it was too dangerous. I mean, it's scary.
So what do you think about that though? Like, I want to go travel.
Yeah.
Do you think it's safe to go to these? Have you traveled to like Middle Eastern countries?
I've never been to a Middle Eastern country. I was all over Russia when it was still the USSR, and that was
really
awesome.
You have great stories, probably.
Oh my God.
For reporting?
I was not. I was 18 and rode a bicycle over the Caucasus Mountains, and it was before the fall of communism, and that was just absolutely
So it was like
insane.
Georgia. You kind of going to
Tbilisi.
Tbilisi.
Georgia. Where else were we? Flew into Moscow. You had to at the time, but yeah, just Georgia, Tbilisi specifically, Patygorsk, like just all these places
Beautiful
that
there, I'm sure.
Americans hadn't gone, and we were, we knew that 2 of our handlers were KGB, and it was really hard to. My mom was just telling me the other day, you never really talked about that trip because it was really
Intense.
hard and intense to talk about.
Yeah.
So I've been there.
My name is Vladimir.
Yeah, I did. I had some guys try to grab me and kidnap me, and it was my other 18-year-old guy friends were holding onto my legs, and they were pulling my arms. Like, it was crazy. But I grew up in the time of Rocky movies and stuff, and propaganda, massive amounts of propaganda against
Rocky,
Russia.
I like that propaganda.
So all I could think when I was riding my bicycle through some of the most beautiful areas I'd ever even imagined, all I could think was like, holy crap, like this is the part that you don't get to see.
Right.
And so the only other kind of dangerous place I was at the DMZ in Korea.
You were there?
Many years ago.
Wow, that's really cool.
That was, but I think, I think education, travel is one of the biggest, most important parts of education. And, I would go to the Middle East if I had the chance. Absolutely. I went to Cuba and loved it. And it reminded me a lot of Russia 30 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
It's stuck in the past, right? Don't they have cars from the 50s?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but also just the resilience and brightness of the people, even living under communism. It was really interesting.
Right.
I've been considering, my husband is tri-citizenship. He's got a Chilean passport, a Great British passport, and American. And now that we're married, I was thinking about trying to get a Chilean or GB passport myself, just to not have to be the American everywhere I go.
Right. So you
But-
can, yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
It's a good idea because it takes the stigma away from the American.
Yeah, I have a cousin of mine who was in the military, who was stationed at Ramstein, and he would go to the bars, and they would have signs that would say "No Americans."
Damn
It's kind of
Americans. Yeah. And I mean, not to get
That's the way I feel like when
super political, but I am totally ready to move to Canada if Trump wins again.
Really?
Oh my God. But I said that the first time, and here I am still in Oakland.
I feel the same way when I go to different parts of America with my California plates, or another
people
Californian.
hate Californians, yeah.
Everywhere I go, everywhere I've been, even Washington. Oh, you're coming up here and
Yeah.
do this, and Portland. Oh, come on.
I still make a point of people say, "Where are you from?" I say, "Well, I live in Oakland, but I'm from Alaska." I still make that point because I'm not from California.
Yeah. If you were to say, Alaskan people are cool. Everyone knows Alaskans are cool.
Yes. Well, a lot of people want to know about Sarah Palin from Alaska, but
Oh, sir, I can see Russia from here.
yeah. I knew her. We worked at the same TV station up there. She was our fill-in sports anchor.
Really?
So I actually knew her, hung out with her, and yeah,
I think she's
a good example of why you need education and why you need to travel outside of your state to manage a country.
right.
Yeah.
She has a
Just
small
no
town
life
mentality.
Yeah. Well, even here in California, you drive up toward Auburn or something, and you're in small town America
Oh
really
yeah,
fast.
there's a lot of small town here. In
Yeah.
California.
Difference.
Yeah. And so then you've got like the Catholic religion, like you've got a
Catholic.
big religion thing
Yeah.
going that you haven't really thought about, and yeah, it's.
Catholic.
Have you ever thought about politics?
Me? Mm-hmm. No, why?
Just because you're talking about all these really big issues, and
I used to be into that, but I don't anymore because I just feel people get very, I don't know, they get really, if you don't agree with them, they
get mean.
They get mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do this. Can we do this for a living next?
Yes.
This
he
is
said,
so
it looks like he says
cool.
yes.
Want to do this? Are you guys hungry? I'm
Yes.
hungry. Are
Okay,
you?
so
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap it up. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm just going to do closing.
Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer, for being on the show. Where can people find more information about you and your work?
You can go to my website. It's techish, TECHISH.com. Follow me across social media, whether it's Twitter, Jennifer Jolly, Jen Jolly. You just Google me and you should be able to find out where I am and what I'm doing.
Okay. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Evan Weiss Show. Head over to iTunes to listen to previous shows. Questions? Email us at e@evanweiss.com.